Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. We're back with another amazing video, and this time, let's talk about Biollante. Biollante is a giant rose that fought Godzilla, a bizarre one-shot adventure in what was otherwise a straight-up monster fight movie. However, on closer examination, it could be Biollante's sole, most bizarre encounter with Godzilla. A true tribrid, created from a mutated rose, the DNA of a dead teenage girl, and cells ripped right from Godzilla's own body. Not only is she a plant kaiju, but she's grief made flesh, an immortal test subject that cannot be slain, and perhaps the reason for the existence of a second god-tier monster. This video will surely explore Biollante's monstrous anatomy, the capabilities of her body, and the reasons Japanese studio Toho has yet to let her go. How was Biollante actually created? Biollante's origin is a tale of tragedy, desperation, and reckless genetic engineering. We need to begin by walking through what actually happened to her and the sequence of events that created her in order to understand how her anatomy works. It starts after Godzilla's disastrous rampage in 1984. After this terrible incident, a brilliant scientist, Dr. Shiragami, receives samples of Godzilla's cells, known as G cells, for investigation in the Middle Eastern country of Sarawak. It would be an understatement not to say that, at first glance, the goal is good. Sarawak wants to harness the G cells' regenerative and highly adaptable nature to genetically modify crops that can withstand its dry desert conditions. But their efforts are thwarted when the harsh world of corporate espionage emerges. The ruthless biomajor organization stages a terrorist attack against Dr. Shiragami's lab. The facility is destroyed in the explosion, and tragically, Erika, Shiragami's beloved daughter, dies in the blast. The broken scientist makes his first unnatural creation in the wake of his grief. Giving way to his urgent desire to maintain what is alive in his child, he covertly transplants Erika's cells into a common rosebush in the hope that her spirit will remain in the flowers and stems. This secret botanical memorial is peaceful for 5 years, before a sudden and violent eruption from Mount Mihara causes tremors that seriously damage his precious roses. Shiragami panics, scared that he will lose his daughter a second time, and crosses a forbidden line. He unethically injects the very same rose that contains Erika's human DNA with the volatile Godzilla cells. This disastrous move results in the creation of a genetically living mixture of human, plant, and kaiju in one unstable organism. They start to grow at an artificially fast rate and appear as the monstrous, fearsome being that Dr. Shiragami dubs Biollante. What's actually different between her two forms? Biollante's anatomy is drastically altered, and she experiences a horrific transformation that divides her into two distinct, fearsome shapes, unlike most kaiju that have little to no change to their anatomy. The first form, usually referred to as the flower beast, or the rose form, is a gigantic rooted monster in the waters of Lake Ashi. On the surface, she looks like a monstrous blooming rose. But when the petals open, they reveal a nest of ferocious jaws set in the bud at the center, surrounded by long, highly prehensile vines. She suffers from this initial condition and tends to be quite immobile, using her reach more than her mobility to interact with her environment. Her second form of anatomy is the larger and much more deadly plant beast form. At around 120 meters tall, this one dispenses with all the alluring beauty of the rose and delivers pure terror. 6 big and terrifying tusks surround her head, which is shaped much like a prehistoric Monstrous or a mutated crocodile. Her huge mouth has rows of knife-like teeth, frighteningly lining the inside. Moreover, she has many more mobile, spear-tipped tendrils that can penetrate armor. It's also important to note that the naming of these forms is not consistent throughout the material Toho has used outside the film. She is known to some as the flower beast or plant beast, first form, second form, and by a few other alternate terms. The cause of this radical change in the organism's physical makeup is also intriguing. Some of her organic flesh is scorched by Godzilla's radioactive atomic breath, but it doesn't just pass away. It rises as glowing spore energy. These spores travel and later sprout into the more aggressive and heavily armored plant-beast form, ready for an even more violent round 2. What can Biollante's body actually do in a fight? If physical ability is the sole measure, then Biollante is one of the most formidable enemies that Godzilla has ever encountered in combat. She has many heavily mutated tendrils as her main weaponry. These aren't just vines, they are thick, muscular limbs with chomping jaws that may actively crush and seize huge opponents. Some of these have hard, spiny tips capable of easily penetrating Godzilla's incredibly tough flesh. This is not a theoretical ability. One of these vines impales his right hand there during their vicious second fight at Wakasa Bay. Moreover, her mobility is astounding, considering how she looked in her initial appearance. Although she may seem like a plant, Biollante's plant-beast form is capable of charging like a real monster over land. She does this by dragging her huge body toward her prey, with her thick primary tendrils functioning almost like scuttling legs. Also, she can emerge from underground and ambush her opponent from below. This directly translates into an impressive element of surprise. Despite her massive size, Biollante can remain unseen underground until she's ready to strike. She's just as capable of suddenly erupting into a fight as she is of acting like an open brawler. Though her blows are powerful, her signature weapon, the radioactive acid sap, is so bizarre that it deserves its own analysis. How does Biollante make her acid sap? Biollante's signature attack is her acid sap, a toxic, corrosive, and highly radioactive stream of fluid. This horrible substance can be squirted from her large crocodilian mouth. It's extremely powerful and can severely blind an opponent and break through kaiju-level hide. An orange glow appears in her mouth before she fires the liquid. The exact mechanism in-universe by which she can produce this acid? Well, it's just weird, and one of the weirdest bits of kaiju biology in the entire Toho franchise. According to official reference materials, her sap is so corrosive that it can even dissolve diamond. The exact biochemical mechanism by which Biollante produces this particular sap, however, is not explained in the film. It's also vital to tie this one-off weapon into the Godzilla cell part of her genome. The radioactive nature of the sap fits directly with the irradiated Godzilla DNA she is constructed from. Her otherwise plant-like body produces a liquid, weaponized death stream, which is the perfect example of the hybrid nature of her internal organs. Why can't Biollante actually die? The worst part of Biollante's body is the fact that she refuses to die. Science fiction seriously uses the word immortality a lot, but for Biollante, it is a literal biological process. This is greatly attributed to her incredible regeneration, which is her gift from the Godzilla cells in her body makeup. These G cells allow her to recover from severe injuries that would kill a normal human being. This includes the fact that she can regenerate catastrophic damage caused by Godzilla's atomic breath. Her capability of breaking down her body is one of her ultimate defenses. However, her regeneration is only half the story. She can disintegrate her mighty body into millions of golden energy spores when she's already in a critical state and at the very edge of destruction. These brilliant spores effortlessly rise into the air without sustaining any additional injury. At a later stage, under favorable conditions, these spores can transform into a healthy and sometimes evolved physical body. This is the same escape hatch that she uses after her two major on-screen fights with Godzilla. This shocking truth is addressed head-on by Dr. Shiragami's in-story claim. He's quite clear that Biollante can't actually be killed because of her combination of fast regeneration and her untouchable spore form. There's a disturbing implication about her role in the kaiju hierarchy here. The first time she fights and she's defeated, she's not destroyed. It simply means that Godzilla forces her to retreat and reform elsewhere, waiting it out. Does Biollante really have a human soul inside her? The human part of Biollante's body is the saddest part of her body, located beneath the plant tissue and radioactive kaiju cells. In a very literal sense, Biollante's body is constructed from human DNA. But more than that, the film suggests that a conscious human presence is playing a role inside the large artificial body. This psychic confirmation is mainly achieved through Miki Saigusa, a very sensitive psychic from the Japanese Psionics Research Center, whom Dr. Shiragami asks to examine Erika's roses. As Miki watches the large rose form standing in Lake Ashi, she feels that Erika's consciousness truly exists inside Biollante and is very awake. The heartbreaking relationship between the two is evident as Miki senses Erika's distress and fear from inside the beast. The young girl's consciousness seems trapped in a shell that is rapidly changing and radioactive, making the nature of this creature so much more complex. This film's emotional thread is beautifully rewarded at the end. As Biollante disintegrates into golden spores to evade death once more, Miki can hear Erika's spirit clearly say "thank you" after her final vicious battle. This is the actual thesis of the monstrous anatomy angle. She is also a giant, monstrous, feral force and a lonely, frightened human, making her much more than just an animal rampaging around and tearing things up. How did Godzilla actually beat Biollante, both times? In assessing Biollante's fighting prowess, it's important to examine her two big duels with the King of the Monsters. The first round is at the tranquil Lake Ashi. In this case, Biollante's flower beast form is rooted and not moving as such. Godzilla keeps on pounding, and Biollante suffers direct hits from his atomic breath, causing her to be badly burned. She only survives by activating her emergency biological procedure. She breaks apart into spores and hides in the sky. The situation at Wakasa Bay is very different for round 2. Let's be honest about this encounter. It was a pretty good draw for Godzilla. Godzilla is attacked by Biollante's new plant beast form, which is able to attack with extreme vigor and directly wounds Godzilla by piercing his hand before holding her own against his immense power. Only when Godzilla takes the chance and aims his atomic breath right into her huge open mouth, inflicting massive damage from the inside, does the battle begin to turn. But there's a huge caveat, making this Godzilla's true victory a mixed blessing. The JSDF's microwave plates and artificial lighting have already been raising Godzilla's internal body temperature, and Biollante's corrosive sap helps push it high enough for the anti-nuclear energy bacteria, or ANEB, dormant inside him to take effect. The ANEB is a highly experimental bioweapon developed for the purpose of weakening and potentially killing Godzilla. This is why his apparent win over Biollante comes just as the ANEB almost kills him. Ultimately, neither fight is a clean knockout victory. Round 1 is a temporary Godzilla victory, while Round 2 is a near knockout on both sides. What happened to Biollante's spores after the movie ended? Godzilla vs. Biollante's final moments are a hauntingly beautiful but deeply ambiguous scene. Biollante's golden spores shoot high after her second loss and serious internal damage. After a while, they can be seen from the ground as an immense glowing rose-shaped cloud peacefully floating far above Earth. The plot of this ambiguous ending gave rise to one of the most popular theories in the entire Godzilla franchise. These floating spores have been strongly linked to the production of the galactic tyrant Space Godzilla in 1994's Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Many people believe that Biollante's cells were swept far into the universe, came in contact with immense cosmic energy, and eventually absorbed crystalline organisms to create the new monster. It should be understood, however, that this is one of two theories presented on screen in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, rather than an outright confirmed fact. There is, however, a great behind-the-scenes connection that makes this cosmic theory much stronger for dedicated fans. Biollante's original creator, Shinichiro Kobayashi wrote an early draft for what became Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, though this work is not credited in the finished film. This early script was titled Godzilla vs. Neo-Godzilla, and it introduced the idea of a crystalline space doppelganger for Godzilla, connecting the concepts of Godzilla and Neo-Godzilla at a creator level. Why does Biollante's name have two completely different origins? The name Biollante, like the name of a plant, has an interesting dual heritage, with part of it coming from the fictional story and the other part from its actual development. In terms of the in-story explanation, it's very specific. The Japanese doctor, Dr. Shirigami, gives his horrendous creation the name Biollante, which he tells his fellow scientists is the name of a particular plant spirit from ancient Norse mythology. The academic reason is very funny. In real Norse mythology, there is no such figure. There is no historical reference to a plant spirit named Biollante. It is only a part of the in-universe lore from a bereaved scientist, not a real-world myth. The original meaning of the name is much more related to classic literature and inventiveness. The unique name was inspired by the French word for violin, violon, by writer Shinichiro Kobayashi, the man who created the name. This particular inspiration came from a line in 19th century French poet Paul Verlaine's well-known poem Chanson d'automne, or something like that. Kobayashi combined the word violon with the katakana character te, doing so on purpose since no other kaiju name used the character, so that his monster would sound completely different. Plus, there is a cute little coincidence, as Kobayashi himself has noted. The completed name happened to suggest bio and biotechnology, which is an appropriate association for the organism in question, but not something Kobayashi planned from the start. How did an amateur dentist's contest entry become a Godzilla movie? Biollante's existence is as interesting as her genetic makeup, given the production history behind it. It was a bold move for Toho Studios in the mid-1980s when they decided that they would approach their famous franchise in an unprecedented manner and host a huge public story contest to determine the story of their next big Godzilla movie. It was a huge success, with more than 5,000 individual submissions from enthusiastic fans that were eventually whittled down to a small group of finalists. The grand prize winner of this massive creative effort was Shinichiro Kobayashi. The most interesting thing about Kobayashi is that he was a practicing dentist, a part-time screenwriter, and not even a professional Toho staff writer. There's an even earlier connection that makes this underdog victory even better. As a 16-year-old high school student, Kobayashi had already submitted a separate plant-animal hybrid monster story to Tsuburaya Productions. That idea was adapted into the Return of Ultraman episode, The Life That Can't Be Forgiven, featuring the monster Ryogon. It's also worth mentioning that Kobayashi's original winning script was quite different from the final 1989 movie. It managed to maintain the main emotional elements: Erica's sad demise, Biollante's desperate creation, and much of the spore drifting ending. But it also prominently featured a second, completely different monster created by Dr. Shirigami. This one was a weird ratfish hybrid known as Dutalius, who was supposed to be one of Godzilla's early opponents, but was eliminated from the final film. Where has Biollante shown up since 1989? Biollante has never appeared in a major Godzilla movie since her stunning debut appearance and ascension to the ranks of the gods in 1989. But she's given herself a legacy in a number of other media too. She has an impressive track record in the world of video games, most notably as a sought-after secret unlockable character in the fighting game Godzilla Unleashed for Nintendo Wii. She also appears in the separate Nintendo DS game Godzilla Unleashed Double Smash. Gaming history also points out that she had originally been planned for, but was later dropped from, the earlier game Godzilla Save the Earth. Outside of the digital world, Biollante has flourished on the pages of comic books. She is a key supporting character in IDW's popular series Godzilla Cataclysm, where she helps Godzilla and Mothra battle the demonic Destoroyah. In addition, she's been featured in several other Godzilla comic book series, sometimes fighting iconic enemies such as King Ghidorah. Outside of her original standalone movie, Biollante has been a somewhat unusual presence in the overall franchise. Much more frequently, she shows up in licensed video games and sprawling comic narratives than she gets appearances in movies. That's why, for over 30 years, there have been die-hard fans who have been begging for her big screen comeback. Is Biollante finally coming back to the big screen? For decades, fans have been wanting her to come back to a movie theater. But the question remains, will it ever happen for Biollante? The Monsterverse angle has definitely brought a glimmer of hope. Director Michael Dougherty has come out and admitted that he would definitely like to see Biollante in Legendary's massive Monsterverse. As a result, fans have been fantasizing about her making her debut in the 2027 release Godzilla x Kong Supernova. But nothing involving Biollante has been officially confirmed by the studio at this time. There's also a much newer rumor that's swirling around Toho's own homegrown films. There's been a lot of speculation that Godzilla Minus Zero, the highly anticipated sequel to Toho's Oscar-winning Godzilla Minus One from 2023, could star Biollante as the main antagonist. It is important to state that we are not confirming anything here. The latest official teasers leading up to the film's release have not identified a new kaiju villain, while the official synopsis states that the returning characters face an all-new calamity. As for the grand live-action comeback of Biollante, without hyping up a return that hasn't yet happened, as of this writing, Biollante's grand live-action comeback is still pure speculation on every front. Of course, this never-ending uncertainty places her in the exact same state of limbo in which her golden spores have been floating since the credits appeared in 1989. But at the end of the day, Biollante isn't just an early and easy-to-forget Heisei-era detour. She may be one of the most quietly ambitious opponents Godzilla ever fought. She's a giant of a creature, carefully pieced together from deep sadness, wild genetic crosses, and one unlucky rose, brought to life through a large Toho fan contest and an unsung dentist's imagination. She can't really be killed for good. She may have helped give birth to the galactic terror Space Godzilla beyond the limits of Earth's atmosphere, and more than 30 years later, she remains a fan favorite, with neither Toho nor Legendary having announced her live-action return. She may appear in a future big-budget Monsterverse installment, or perhaps in Godzilla Minus Zero, or she may continue to lie dormant for a bit longer among the stars. But one thing's for sure, Biollante is a strong testament to how Godzilla's most human opponent is also his strangest. So if you like this video, do let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.